Hi, Joan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here today. So, I want to give my guest always the opportunity to introduce themselves in their own words about who they are and what they do, and then we'll get into this interview.
Okay, my name is Joan Ranquet. I'm an animal communicator, author, TEDx speaker, and founder of Communication with All Life University. We have programs for animal communication, energy healing, nature and wildlife, working in shelters, and animals in transition. And I take people on wildlife trips.
I saw that. That seems very exciting and fascinating. I definitely want to know more about that when we get into the interview. My second question I've left in since the beginning of the podcast, because I built this podcast around the intersection of spirituality, personal development, and healing. And most everyone who comes here has some sort of spiritual inclination, but we don't all start out like that. Usually we're plunked into something or we're not really given anything or some version of that in between. So I'm always curious for my guests, like what did they start out with, either inherently knowing or being taught, and then where are they centering themselves in their practices today?
So I love this question because I um, grew up very Catholic. I went to a Catholic girls' school until I was kicked out in the 10th grade. But I struggled with two things when I was little. Number one, nobody said at the time that animals were going to heaven. And so I fought with the nuns, like in the first grade, about the fact that animals had souls. And then the other thing is my mom said that she knew she had a little feminist on her hands when I didn't come out of my room for 2 days because I found out that women couldn't be priests. And I had been doing mass for the neighborhoods. I think I
Mm-hmm.
was 5, and I was like, what? That's really my origin story as far as religion goes. I've always felt very connected to Judaism, even though I was raised Catholic. Went to college, and I started doing and this was a really long time ago, so it was not hip, but I was really drawn to yoga and meditation. I was still in high school, and this wasn't like me, so I knew it was kind of, later came to understand that it must have been a very strong past life thing. So I was very drawn to that, so I started a practice at a very young age, and I'm really glad because I was kind of a wild child, and then I got, kind of straight and narrow. My sister died when I was 24, and that really threw me into a whole journey of studying a lot of like the Tibetan book of living and dying, and all of
Yeah.
it really got into it. And in my 20s, I would say that I was drawn to, at first, Native American and understanding that. I've literally gone the map and I've read all the great texts. That's why I love that you're asking me
Mm-hmm.
this, because no one asked me and no one knows. But I literally have read most of the Indian.
All the traditions.
Yes, I've read everything,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it. So people are going to not like this, but I find that certain amounts of even shamanism, that there's still a running theme of what I was mad when I was 5, is that the
Mm-hmm.
patriarchy still, you can track it through most religions. And so I now say that my religion is nature. I feel very connected to God, the universe, when I'm outside. So I just came in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I ride. I work out and then ride my horses or hang out with my horses. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I go on a huge hike. I don't see another human soul. I just have my dogs. And then on Sundays, I have a very quiet moment. If I'm not traveling, I have a very quiet
Mm-hmm.
moment. I call my couch the church. So I go to church on Sunday morning and visualize the week, the year, work on what I'm working on, and spend a lot of time in
Mm-hmm.
gratitude. So that's it. And self-development wise, obviously my soul was developing it, and there was a horse along the way that kind of started my whole work around that time
Mm-hmm.
in the late 80s. I've also always, not only read the serious texts, but I've also always been in coaching or therapy or getting energy healing done to me, even though it's, healer heal thyself. So that's been a very
Yeah.
profound journey. Does that?
Mm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. Well, you're in good company, and you don't I even have to do those disclaimers because most everyone who comes here and listens to the podcast, I think, feels exactly the same way about religion and the patriarchy and all of the things. And I too myself, like, I feel deeply connected to nature. And I do say, like, nature is my church now.
Yeah.
When I go, when I feel lost, or when I feel I mean, any type of emotion that I need support, I literally go out into nature and try to calibrate myself and attune myself to, everything that is. And so I love that you said that, because I think that's absolutely spot on for many of us. From my experience, because I grew up in a very religious, weird, cultic experience, the idea of taking the human being outside of nature and putting them into a building to connect with God seems very strange to me now.
Yeah, me too. Unless it's my couch looking out at the mountains, but um,
Right.
I, and I that's only one day of my worship, if you will.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
6 days are literally out, just being so,
Connected.
yeah.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Well, you're good company. Most everyone that comes here will feel that deeply. So I'm glad that you said that. So you've got a lot of things going on, but I did want to give you some space here. You've got a book that you've recently released, I think last year, called Emotional Freedom Technique for Animals and Their Humans, Creating a Harmonious Relationship Through Tapping. I have not read this book, but I thought that we would give the audience an idea of what this book is about. And then I've got some, like, specific questions about the work around this.
So EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, is a technique of tapping on specific acupressure points. And those acupressure points, um, according to traditional Chinese medicine, are calming points. There are some points that are stimulating, there are some that are tonifying, like cleansing, but these are calming points. And these specific points are connected to meridians, and those meridians are connected to organ systems. And in traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that those meridians and organ systems are all connected to emotions. The emotional component for animals, if we think about what happens for an animal, they live kind of in a fight or flight or rest and digest. They don't say to themselves, oh, this guy is just a jerk. I can intellectualize this and bring my system down, right? They
Right.
are like, what? That guy's a jerk, right? It's like they're up or they're down. And there isn't a lot of in between. And some animals get stuck in that kind of fight or flight response all the times. And then there are other animals that are like, yeah, I don't really care. The other thing that's different about animals is that if you and I have a problem, I can get on the phone and call my friend, and then I can call two other friends, then I can call a therapist. Every time I've expressed it, the story is losing its value, right? So for an
Hmm.
animal, they're in our homes and they don't have a way of expressing unless they get to run and bark and do all the dog things, or horses need to, move all the time, and cats need to move and be on the prowl. So all the ways that they would naturally express something is taken away from them in our domesticated lives. Um,
Yeah.
I always use this example that if there was a duck on the pond, and the duck is floating along and life is good, and in the distance it sees there's two beady little eyes, and they're attached to a fox that sees this duck as dinner, right? Well, when
Hmm.
the duck recognizes, uh-oh, he goes into freeze, and then the adrenaline kicks in and he goes into fight or flight. So he flies away. In that time that he flies away, his adrenaline is releasing. He lands on the other pond as if nothing has happened. He's not traumatized by it. He's not holding that emotion. But for our animals at home, they have their own stuff going on. They don't necessarily have a way to release it. Then we come in with our stress and compound their situation. And so
Mm.
that's when we have behaviors that we don't want. So
Yeah.
with
That's
emotional,
fascinating.
yeah, and the other thing about animals is that their entire safety is their survival is based on emotions, right? Like
Hmm.
you're a group of antelope out on the savannah, and you're in that rest and digest phase, and life is good, and the babies are running and jumping, and then 6 lions over here are on the hunt. Suddenly they're in fight or flight, and they're out of there. So it's fear. Like we always say, oh, positive and negative emotions, but it's not true. Their survival is based on their ability to feel fear. So
Mm-hmm.
we can't give it a negative or positive. We have to look at, there's a challenging behavior or a challenging emotion, and we want a different outcome. And so we work through tapping, EFT tapping. We're tapping on the points, on the feel-good points, telling a challenging story and expressing challenging emotions until
Mm-hmm.
they release.
I haven't read this book, but I'm assuming that the through point there is that you're recognizing the patterns of the animals and trying to help the human recognize that release system that you're talking about
Yeah.
through the tapping that can happen. That's really interesting. I think that's really helpful too. And also, like you said, even though we talk about things like, yes, the intensity of it can change, but then sometimes that that energetic charge stays stuck in us if
Yeah.
we don't find the right way to resolve it. So I love that that's an option for us to take away from this concept.
In the book, I have questions to ask yourself, on
Yeah.
the animal to come up with the script. And then I have all the tapping points laid
Oh,
out so you can see the
yeah.
tap on the animal. And then some sample scripts, and then a lot of things, everything from helping animals that are super shy and timid or shut down to aggressive or reactive or too exuberant for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Cats peeing, horses bucking, dogs biting. That's all in here. But
All the things.
yeah, and it's all of the things. And it's also, when you spend that kind of time working with your animal on something that you want to shift, you're becoming closer and closer. You're deepening your relationships. And here I talk about a lot like fear of fireworks. I have a YouTube video for that people can tap along with their dog. And
I'm gonna need to go watch that one because we have that in my household.
okay, and that's a perfect example of like taking the time now before 4th of July. And often you'll see in the comments, because it's been up there for years, that people say, "Oh my God, my dog is coming to me now when the fireworks started because he knows this calms him down." So it's really,
Okay.
yeah, it's amazing that you're creating an even deeper sense of safety for that animal.
Not to make this about me and my dog, but I feel like the thing that's been happening with us with the fireworks thing, she's 5 years old. Like, it's now created like a baby trauma trigger in both of us because I feel stressed out that she feels stressed out.
Well,
So like when the fireworks come and then I'm like, I feel how stressed out and even this last year for New Year's, and in my neighborhood, like people are putting them off all the time. It's like not even legal. I don't even know why they're doing them. So they're so loud and they go on until like 2 a.m. So even this New Year's Eve, we actually went out to the coast because we knew there wouldn't be. Like we literally physically took her out of this environment to like try to help give her some space, and me too, because I'm like, I just feel so stressed, like I can't help her in any way.
so that is a perfect example of why I wrote this book, because
Mm-hmm.
it's she had her thing, you have your thing. Now your thing about her thing makes her thing more, and then that makes
Right.
you more, and then that makes her right.
Yes. Yeah. It's just escalating.
Yeah, I call it the bad biofeedback loop. Right? It's like the infinite.
Yes.
Like, get me out of here. Um, so you would take the investigation script for the human and say, when my dog gets freaked about fireworks, and then I feel anxious, or you would
Mm-hmm.
fill that out, and then you would tap on yourself, and I've got all the tapping points for the human.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna need to pick this book up and watch that YouTube video.
Yeah, yeah, because that's it.
Yeah.
It really, really, really helps.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on my stuff because I have so many questions for you, but I really wanted to ask you too, in terms of like present moment awareness for animals. I feel like a lot of us, because especially here in the West, like we're so busy, like life is so crazy. A lot of our domesticated animals are sitting alone all day and home. But there's like this beautiful way that like I think they understand when we're not present with them. And I wondered if you had anything to say about deepening that awareness when we see our animals.
Some people shy away from the word meditation, and other people, like
Mhm.
after my Native American phase, I forgot to say, I thought I was a Buddhist, and then I even thought I could be a Hindu, but now I'm just, nature is my church. But I've taken away a lot of, just quieting times. Like, and again, I like the word meditation, but I think it isn't for everybody. But one, if we thought about what that could look like, for one thing, when you know you're up in your head, don't feel guilty and feel like you have to be like, oh no, I've got to do something more with my dog, right? Like that is that cycle, right? We start cycling
Mhm.
that. I think like I dedicate my morning to my dogs and my horses. So from basically 7:30 to 9:30, I'm either out with my horses or out with my dogs and my
Mhm.
plants. I dedicate, and I can because this is what I do, and I've got to walk my talk, and you know what I mean? Like I can get that
Yes.
big amount of time. But even just saying, look at, and the other thing I do is I set the alarm for like, I don't know, 5:30, and I don't really get out of bed for another 45 minutes so that I have cuddle time with my animals, right? Like,
Mm.
so I build in what that's going to look like. 3 ways that I have really great time with my dogs and cats, and longer extended periods with my horses. If I'm not traveling, I get out first thing in the morning with the dogs, and I do lunch for the horses so the dogs come with me. I do dinner for the horses and the dogs come with me, and I do a late check. You can build it into your schedule where it's like, you're coming with me on this, and then don't feel guilty that other time, right? Some of
Mhm.
that's dedicated playtime, and some of it's just dedicated, you're joining me. Um, and then another thing is when you're out on that walk, maybe have your phone in your pocket so it's tracking your steps, but
Right.
you're not texting your best friend. Um, which I'm guilty of. But
I feel like they know now how distracted we are too. I think it's very obvious to them if we're not
yeah,
paying attention.
yeah, absolutely. So those, I mean, those are some, and then of course I meditate after I have that cuddle time. I do meditate, and all my animals come in. If they weren't part of the cuddling, because one of my dogs has
Mhm.
a, a longer coat, she's too hot, just all the reasons that
Sure.
somebody might sleep in the other room. My animals love when I'm really quiet and meditating. My animals love when I, take a long bath. It's like, find the things that they like to do with you, that you're having mutual time together, and then dedicate some time to them. Even if it's 5 minutes, right? It's better to have
Mhm.
5 full minutes than it is to have a full day distracted and feeling guilty.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's really good advice. Sometimes we can get our day away from us. I work from home, so I know for me, sometimes, like, depending on meetings and interviews, like, it's just not possible for me to get out with my dog. But, and on those days, and I think you said this on your TEDx talk, like, I'm feeling just like an enormous amount of guilt,
Yeah.
because one of the rituals we have is going out into the forest, and I let her off leash because I can tell she really loves being able to have that sense of freedom and like explore. And I love doing that for her. But when I can't do that, I'm always like, oh God, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty about it. So even maybe trying to find some other way to create some like connective time or playtime together intentionally is good.
It's better because would they love to be off leash and running free every single day? Sure, but it's not always possible, and I would. That's why I do it every other day, and then I get my horses in those days that are not dog days,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't feel guilty about the fact that today's a day we're going to have leash walks, you know, And that's it.
Yeah.
That's what I can do. The trick with guilt is that dogs and cats smell it, right? And then they get away with anything they want, right? When we feel guilty, it's like an invitation, hey, poop on the rug. Or, it's guilt is like our worst enemy. It's not, the
Mm-hmm.
dog isn't sitting there going, can't believe she's not taking me out to the forest today to let me run free, right? She's not
Yeah.
thinking about that. That would be fun. She's not here to make you feel guilty. She's not here to, make you feel obligated. She's here. And
Mm-hmm.
you feel those things. So when you recognize, oh, I wish I could do that. Maybe I also wish I could do it for me, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
we get out of that guilt and we accept that whatever it is that we are doing is good enough.
Mm.
When we get
Yeah, that's
there,
so important.
yeah, because when we get there, otherwise we look in their eyes and it becomes a vortex of like, oh no, and then I didn't do this, and when you were free, I forgot to, right? Like it's
And then you're actually apologizing to them for 15 minutes,
yes, when
Yes.
you could have been like just sitting there having yogurt together or something. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that. That's what we do. When I got divorced, something happened, but I got rid of the worry gene and I got rid of the guilt
Mm-hmm.
gene and I got rid of if I had anxiety, I can't remember, but I don't have it. And
Yeah.
I don't worry about stuff and I don't feel guilty because I know
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, that self-compassion is everything. It's a real thing we have to cultivate. I really appreciate you offering some solutions for that. In your TEDx talk, you also talked about the Rainbow Bridge, but I forget the title of the TEDx talk. I did want to talk to you a little bit about this as well, because I know there's so many questions about, can our animals reach us on the other side? Will they be there when we leave our physical form and all of those things? But I also wanted to talk about like the grief aspect. So I have kind of like two back-to-back questions here, but I wondered if you could tell people, when our animals pass, what are they experiencing? Like, how are they going through that? Do they feel anything for us as they're going to the other side? What information can you offer us about that experience from their perspective?
Yeah, I mean, from their perspective, it's like often they will be here with us. Let's say they've had a long illness and they've been in
Mm-hmm.
our care, and especially toward the end of their life, we tend to drop everything. So we've almost created like this love bubble, right?
Mm, yeah.
We were so, we don't, we're suddenly doing those things that we could have done instead of feeling guilty, right? We're suddenly
Mm-hmm.
so present and we've dropped everything and we're in this space with them. It will often feel like, not that they're hanging on, but that they're enjoying that, right? And then when the
Mm-hmm.
time comes and they have to go, it's like there's a little bit of resistance. And I liken that to, it's like a labor into the other side, or,
Yes.
it's going to have its, not pain, if you will, but it is a labor, whether it's been an illness or whatever. So there might
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's that little bit of resistance. And then it's like, oh, freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they had a tumor, it's suddenly there's there is almost not a physicality, but a sense of love and the freedom of running and things like that maybe they weren't able to do is so
Right.
profound. And that's why sometimes when we finally get a visitation from like our mother or a dog, or they'll present when they were younger, like how they've
Mm-hmm.
probably viewed themselves before before
They got sick.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they feel a sense of freedom, and yet because they're in that huge place of love, of course there's going to be tentacles, and not an obligated tentacle, but a love tentacle toward us and
Mm-hmm.
connection to us. And I joke that during COVID I had dinner every night with my dead parents, but it's like
Mm.
I felt them around a lot, and they were dead
Yeah.
for a while. So that sense of who they were
Yeah.
can be available to us at any time, even if they've
Mm-hmm.
moved on. So there's a sense of their spirit, their essence, their soul that's still available. But that mindfulness or that quietness or that
Mm-hmm.
meditation that I talked about earlier to do with your animals, if you get into a practice of that, then it's not so, it will be perfectly normal to feel like, okay, I'm sitting up in my bed, I'm meditating like I did when my dog was alive, and now I'm hoping that I'll just feel her presence with me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting quiet,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like
Yeah.
keeping that a through line with that.
Practicing that connection, even when there's a non-physical form. My second dog, I had to put her down. She got attacked by an Akita and didn't really was not going to be able to make it through her injuries, and I felt like her soul pass right through me. It was so strong,
Yeah.
like I like a gust of wind right through the center of my being when she passed. And a few days after she had passed, I was laying in bed, obviously deep in grief, and my eyes were closed, and I felt her walking on the bed.
Oh.
And it was like I just thought, like, I can't believe that she can reach me still. Like, I would say that was my first that was my first experience with the like real like quick tragic loss. And then I very much like you had lots of other death come in afterwards. But that was so interesting to me that she could find me in that way, and I didn't even want to open my eyes because I was like, I know intellectually she's not here, but I can feel her on the bed, and I feel like her physical body. It was so interesting.
I had a very similar feeling when my horse that I talked about in the TEDx talk, it literally was like, yeah, he came, almost went with him when he passed, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
I've got to have,
Yeah, you said that he came through like your third eye and out through your
yeah,
your head chakra, right?
yeah, it was so crazy.
Do
But
you feel like he imparted some wisdom to you in that transition too? Like, did he leave something with you?
yeah, I feel like there's so much. I mean,
Yeah.
he was really hard to, that was one of the hardest, letting go. I still feel him around all the time. I almost call my other horse his name, like it's almost daily that it comes up.
Yeah.
8 years. And then I had another horse die in December who I'd had for 33 years. She was 36 years old.
Wow.
And I know they're together. So I feel
Oh.
really, I love that, right? Like I love that they're together, because they were very close here. I feel a lot of wisdom from him every day. I've been so lucky with the animals in my life, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was just going to say, it's interesting that he chose to flow through that part of your own physical body. Like, I think it's interesting to think about why he chose to go right through, your actual physical mind. It's real, and those energy centers. It's real interesting.
yeah, I hadn't even thought of that before this, but he and I were very telepathic. I could visualize something and he could see, and he would do it, right? We had very limited communication otherwise. It was literally
Yeah.
through pictures. He was amazing. Like he trusted me so much in that way. So it
Mm,
was very,
mm,
very cool. One thing I was going to say with regard to what gets in the way sometimes of us feeling connected to those beings is our grief is so intense, and our grief with guilt, there's that pesky word again. It takes over in such a way that we can't get clear enough to be able to connect with them and see them and feel
yes.
and hear them.
Mm-hmm.
That is where tapping, pointing to my book, tapping also
Mm-hmm.
helps with the guilt and the grief and the loss.
I think it's changing because people are becoming a lot more conscious of our environment and reconnected to nature. But I think in the last few generations, especially in my family, there was this idea that animals were below the human hierarchy. And so to even care for your animals in such a deep and, beautiful way seems really foreign to a lot of people. And then if you lose that animal, people are already weird about grief as it is here in the States. But like there's something where people don't understand how you can grieve an animal there, and they'll say things like it's just an animal. But like for people who feel deeply connected to animals, like they aren't just animals. My dog is my best friend.
Yeah,
I love her so much.
yeah, they are family. I'm looking around at my dogs. Yeah, they're being my family here.
Yeah, I wondered if for my second part of that grief question, I just kind of wondered if you could offer anything for the people who are struggling with the guilt and the grief of wanting to feel like they have to rush through it, or feeling sad that they're still thinking about their animals. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But do you have anything to offer about just being able to honor our grief in a really kind and compassionate way if we lose our animals?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that nobody can die a moment before or a moment after they're supposed to. So when we let ourselves off the hook around that, sometimes that just sucks the guilt right out of the room, because we couldn't have done anything different. This was their contract with the universe, so to speak, for that to happen in that way.
Right.
We can't ever pretend to know why your dog had to be attacked by a cheetah, right? Like that. As tragic as it is, there was probably, in big hindsight, not even the first few years, some absolute perfection in how that went. It doesn't mean that you're going to feel like, oh, that was a perfect death.
It was certainly not a perfect,
But
but it taught me a lot. It did
right,
teach me a lot.
right. So in that way, we find the perfection through hindsight, but we have to go through that tunnel. In many ways, that tunnel of grief is no different than that tunnel of labor, coming into this world or coming out of that world, out of this world, in or out of this world. But moving through grief is very important to do. And it becomes like, for me, it becomes like almost a slip, right? It's like, it's part of me. It's not, I'm okay with my grief. I feel like it's part of me. And it's allowing ourselves to feel all those big feelings and to take the time and to find the peace, if you will. Then we have an ability to not only connect with that animal from the past, but we have an opening to be able to then bring on that next animal that's supposed to be with us. You know, we feel really loyal to our feelings about that animal that we've lost, that we don't feel like we can take on another animal. But the truth is, I know all of my dogs have wanted me to have the dogs I have now. Right? My horse Raleigh that I still can feel and miss loves that I have a whole pile. I have a whole new herd, all new horses. By moving through the grief, there's this peace with having the new members of the family. But the other thing to do, so it's like, you want to be able to give yourself the space to do this. You also want to find yourself around people that feel the same way, because like you said, there are people out there, although I don't know them anymore, who might think, oh, this is just a dog or this is just a cat. You can get another bird, and they don't recognize that it's a family member. So finding support by surrounding yourself with other people that feel that way. And I think making little memorials, like each of my animals has a place in the kitchen where, one dog of mine loved her bling. She was such a tomboy, so it was so funny. I have all her bling in a little shadow box with a picture of her. And I've got their pictures everywhere. Finding ways to memorialize them and be able to eventually talk about them without crying, and that they bring a smile to your heart.
I think you're so spot on about the grief being a part of us. I think, like anything in our society, there's this idea that there's always this final destination, whether that's our personal development, our spirituality, our healing. It is an ongoing process, and it is an integration at the same time. So in some ways it's paradoxical, but I think for me, I really resonate with you saying that, because I feel like that about all of the grief I've experienced as well. Like it's with me now forever, and it presents itself in very different ways. But it's now, part of, it's another thread in like the tapestry of my own lived
Absolutely.
experience.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of saying it. And one thing that happens when an animal dies is, so let's say in our daily life, if you aren't aware of like little griefs, we could, like have a fight with a friend, or we have transitions every day. So do our animals, right? Like we could have a friend with a dog and their dog is best friends with our dogs, and now their husband says we have to move, and so we have little transitions and little griefs all the time.
Yeah.
But we don't always look at them. So then when when a human dies, we grieve. But usually that relationship is somewhat complicated. Even if it is, it's complicated. Whereas our animals provide us with such a pure love, and when that pure love
Hmm.
leaves, we're left with, it's almost a bigger sense of grief because we almost grieve all those little griefs that we didn't grieve. We don't have the complication. Going back to the tapestry, they end up like, I couldn't live in a house without a cat. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like, here's the coffee cup and here's the cat. It's like it's just part of the home. It's woven into the fabric of our home. And so to have that innocence, that
Hmm.
not complicated, plus all the griefs that we didn't recognize throughout the last year, all of these things, when
Hmm.
an animal goes, it's like, uh, I can't.
It's compounded.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like compound interest on our grief.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
That's such a good point, and that was such a great way to look at it. Yeah, I think that unconditional love that we get from our pets just uh, it changes you as a human being. I feel like it helps you build a better capacity to like love yourself, but also love humanity. I often think when I'm with my dog and she's like, she's just happy to see like the homeless people and kids and like all sorts of it doesn't matter. Like everyone is the same to her. Like she just loves everybody. And it helps me remember to just like love and accept everybody.
Yeah, it's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
Well, we're kind of getting towards the end here, so I want to give you some space to talk about the work that you do. I was really interested in the wildlife trips that you do, and so if you can say something about that here too, and if anyone is interested in doing that with you or joining you, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, in a couple weeks, I'm going to Tula Tula. The guy that wrote The Elephant Whisperer, he was the Elephant Whisperer. He had taken
Mm,
a rogue herd of elephants that were going to be culled, found some land, had it blessed by the Zulu tribe, and took on these elephants that were not an easy herd. And anyway, we're going to communicate with that iconic herd for 10.
wow.
And then the other trips I do aren't always communication. I'm able to do communication with that because they know those elephants. But just as far as wild elephants go, I was just with a bunch in Zimbabwe, and we didn't do communication per se, but we did a lot of communion and connecting, and had profound experiences with them. Next November, I have a trip to Kenya and Tanzania, and we go to the Sheldrick Trust where the orphan elephants are. We do that in Nairobi, and then we go to Ithumba Camp, which is where the teenage orphan elephants get used to the idea that they're going to be free in the wild. So it's an
Okay.
integration into the wild, and it's
Wow.
incredible because those elephants are very habituated to humans, and some of them you can even scratch their butts. I have an add-on to that trip to Rwanda to be with the gorillas. Next February will be snow leopards in northern India, and
Mm.
then next June will be a dolphin trip. Yeah, so just every the following November. So yeah, you just want to get on my travel list for sure.
What else do you have coming up? What else? How can everyone connect with you online? Where can they find you?
My author page is Joan Ranquet, Communication with All Life. And then I have a Facebook group where I do a live every Tuesday, and lots of free tips and ideas. And that's
Hmm.
called Learn to Communicate with Animals with Joan.
Hmm.
Coming up, we have Animal Communication Level 1 and Energy Healing for Animals Level 1. So end of April is Animal Communication, mid-May starts Energy Healing, and I offer those a couple times a year. And on
Okay.
the topic of grief, I do have a digital class on my site called Learn to Be at Peace After the Loss of a Pet. So that's a good little,
That's like a self-led class someone can take.
yes. I have,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, awesome. I also noticed too that you contributed to two really interesting books as well, the Dharma of Dogs and the Karma of Cats. So I hadn't seen those books yet, but I definitely want to pick them up. They sound really interesting as well.
yeah, they're really good. I mean, there's great writers in there.
Yes, I
Yeah,
saw there's like, I mean, amazing people like that, like Mark Nepo and I think Lama Surya Das, like, Yes, I saw all of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate. I wish we had a few more hours. I'd love to pick your brains about everything animals here, but we've only got this hour together. So I really appreciate you coming here. We always end in gratitude. So I always want to ask my guests, what 3 things are they grateful in this moment, in this week, this year, kind of anything that's rattling around in your heart chakra before we wrap up.
I am really grateful for all of the people who want to learn this work and who come on the trip so that they can get out and spread the word about endangered species.
Mm-hmm.
So all the people that seem to be wanting to help animals, the planet, and of course humanity benefits. I'm really grateful for my own little, what I call my ground crew, the animals here that are helping me and my team, my human team. I know people say that this is a tough time, but it's weird. I don't know that any time wasn't weird. And so I'm really grateful that I get to
Mm-hmm.
be here now and be part of this big shift.
I feel like you have a lot of wisdom within you from everything you've lived through, everything you've learned, and so maybe you have just a deeper perspective about things. People who are in the beginning of their life journey. I know for me, you couldn't send me back to my 20s at all.
No,
That was a very rough time. And it's weird because I feel like I thought I knew everything in my 20s, and I absolutely didn't. I realize now that I'm in my mid 40s now, and I'm like, wow, I really didn't know everything. But I agree with you. I think if you look around, there's some really beautiful shifts happening in humanity. There's some really not great things happening as well. And I just hope that the cumulative response is more positive than negative. I think that's all we can hope for.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joan, for coming. I had such a great time with you.
Yeah,
I love that your animals are there and I can hear crickets in the background the whole time you were talking. It's a very zen interview.
yeah, we work on that.
This podcast was written, directed, and produced by me, your host, Krista Ziomata, in alignment with Light Casting. Music curated and created by Mr. Pixie. You can find I'm Awake Now What on all social media channels by searching IANW Podcast. Head over to your favorite podcast app and subscribe, download, rate, and review. Come back every Sunday to partake in a new and enlightening conversation. May you be filled with love and light until we meet again.